Colleagues, and good afternoon to the Honorable President in absentia. I've been listening to various presenters who really covered many of the issues that we are here talking about today. So mine will just be to come and say Kelakaleo. Just to say what they said, we agree with it as a school. So one of the things that one is always touched about is when you open your radio, or you switch on your radio in the morning, or in the newspapers, go to that page where it's readers' opinions, and you see how frustrated citizens are. From all sorts of things, and mainly it would be on service delivery issues, which me and you are responsible for. Every day when we say we go to work, it means we provide some service of some sort to the citizens. Last week, the US president issued a communication to all federal employees saying, can you send an email to me to indicate the issues you solved last week? Just in the past week, not in the past month, in the past 12 months, in the past week. And any other president can do that, actually, as a matter of fact, or any other minister, or any other premier, or any other mayor. There's one municipality where the mayor used to walk around with a camera. This was before cell phones had cameras, so around 2010 or so. He would walk around with a camera, taking pictures of municipal employees sleeping. That was before EPWP. I think EPWP have formalized sleeping during working hours. So he would take pictures of municipal workers sleeping, and then he would show those pictures to the MM to say at parks or at refuse, this is what people were doing. And it wasn't tea time, it wasn't lunch, but for some reasons they were sleeping. And I'm showing all these examples to say when the entire system is not working, when there's no service delivery, when somebody commits suicide because they've gone to Home Affairs 100 times not getting an ID, or somebody being rude to them at the queue, or the queue just being too long at 3 o'clock being cut, it's me and you who are involved in those. And in some instances, it's me and you who can resolve those. So when a US president says, tell me what you resolved in the past 5 days, it needs to talk to me and you, because it could come to it could come from any of our executive members. So we should ask ourselves, what have we done in the past 7 days that we can proudly write about? And that's what professionalization is about. That's what the professionalization framework seeks to do. To say we've got the constitution that make commitments to the people of South Africa. We've got the NDP that we are currently expected to deliver. We've got Batubele principles that say how should we conduct ourselves as we deliver these services. How can we do that better? There are just different areas to look into it, but eventually is to say, how do we make the Constitution to achieve the goals that it achieves? And amongst the frustration of the people, as they say, some of them would even go to an extent to say, this Constitution that they say is the best in the world is not working for us. When you read the Constitution, you still realize it's one of the best. But it's about the life that we give it as public servants. That can make it really what it can be. The current administration has as part of, I think it has three main areas. So as part of the third one is the building of the state capacity. And this requires a generation of a new public servant who's committed, who's diligent, who's prudent. And prudence, many of you are financial practitioners here. It becomes quite key, especially with public funds. We're talking about the economic problem that has existed for many years, that you'll never, ever have enough money. It's a scarcity problem. I think the day we have enough money, economics will die because we'll be having more than enough. So scarcity is always an issue. How do we become prudent with the little that we have, masterful? Do we know what we are doing? Somebody once asked some professionals to say, what is a professional subject that you can stand in front of people for 10 minutes without reading anything and talk deeply about that subject matter? So when you say I'm an expert, employ me as government, what is the one matter that you can talk to for 10 minutes with expertise? So do we know what we are doing? Do we know what you're supposed to be doing? Ethical and accountable. I think one of the presenters before me, my colleague from KZN, summarized it to say, in many instances, people are well qualified, but simply unethical. And sometimes it breaks one's heart when you look at the qualifications people have. People are CAs. Some of us will die never becoming one. So you become a CA and you're going to ruin your professional life because of being unethical. And people refuse to be accountable. But I think our systems in that tries by all means. But I think ethics, it's one of the key things. And as we know from the State Capture Commission, it was one of the big areas that came out, which is why we are where we are today. Innovative, always seeking new ways of doing things with precision. We know the world is changing. And we can't stand still as public administration. And now we're talking AI. How can we deliver better services using AI, as an example? The energy has, for those of you who have been around for long, you know when we were SAMD and so on, our coverage was quite limited. It was quite to the two spheres of government and mainly to senior managers and to some, to a certain limited extent, maybe to even middle managers. But now we're targeting all to say everyone needs capacity, everyone needs to be capacitated. And these are officials at all spheres of government, all organs, even the boards. Sometimes we forget state-owned enterprises, and we've seen how many of them, when they are not functioning well, how devastating can be to the economy. And when that devastation goes to the economy, it means there's less tax base, and there's less tax to collect. Before you know it, the budget cuts. But if you go, somebody spoke about root cause analysis. If you go to the root cause, it's because if you are not creating the right environment, the economy will not grow at the rate that it's supposed to grow. And as a result, you'll have less money to spend as government. And then eventually it affects every one of us. Institution of traditional leadership. I mean, if you look at a province like this, I think only two provinces in South Africa don't really have this area, Gauteng and Western Cape. Every other province in the country has traditional leaders. And some of them are making very key decisions day in and day out. They're establishing new settlements. Before you know it, the people are blocking the nearest freeway because they want services. Before you know it, you have to divert budgets. I had somebody working in the budget office. You now have to divert a budget that was supposed to maintain a road somewhere because now you must build a new clinic for a new settlement that has just come out. And that settlement, before you know it, is in a land that is not suitable for housing. So the next floods that come, they flush it away. Now you're sitting with a disaster. But where did it start? with that traditional leader who decided, no, here, instead of leaving the place maybe for farming, I'll give it to my people. So if we don't build that capacity at that level, you are having many of these people making serious decisions every day that affect the administration as we know it. Public representatives, I know that this is the elephant in the room, and we keep on saying, but what about politicians? As a school, we try. I must be honest, it's not always easy, but we try. When we started with many of our executive programs, actually, the president participated in one of them during the COVID virtually. Ever since then, we've had winter schools, we've had summer economic governance school, where members of cabinet, premiers, MECs come and attend, mayors also come and attend. The president had promised that he will make it compulsory, but we are yet to see that. But there is that acknowledgement. Cadet, I was just looking at the work that Dodge does in the US, where they show the average age of a federal employee, which is 47 in America. It would be interesting to know the average age in South Africa of a public servant. In many instances, it's at a much higher age. Actually, in teaching, they were saying in the next 10 years, is it 60 or 70%, but it's over 50% of teachers are above the age of 55, something along those lines. So meaning in the next 10 years, teaching profession would lose around 50 or 60% of its current capacity. So what are we doing to the youth that are joining the system or that will be joining the system in the future? Are we preparing them? Or before we know it, we'll have to go elsewhere to employ people, because we have seen there are also people that are not from this country that are working in government, which is allowed, but with certain conditions. And the more we don't have capacity on the young people, the challenge we have. Citizens that are interested in our programs. Somewhere there are civil society, there's trade unions, there are organizations that are always interested in the work of government or even support government. We need to build capacity in those, because in some instances, like in social development, you find that they work more like an extension of government. So we need to think about those. This is the mandate that we try to do. Many of you might have done qualifications at short programs at the NSG. Soon we'll be also issuing qualifications. One of the key elements on professionalization is the issue of examinations, especially for pre-exams. As you know now, we have a program called Nukela. If you want to apply into a senior management within the public service, you have to do that certificate. We're working on reviewing it for levels. So if you want to apply for level 14 upward, there will be an exam. So people will sit in the exam. You can't ask your friend, you have to come. So people will have to come there. One thing I forgot when we were talking public representatives here, one of the things that we've also introduced recently, I see times it's quite flying, it's to also professionalize the offices of the politicians. Because as we know, ministers would have advisors. So up until last year, they could get anyone on the street to be the advisor or to be a chief of staff. Until now, with the framework, it says, if the advisor is coming and is at a level of a senior manager, he must have qualifications that a senior manager should have. And you must know the phone calls that we got after the president announced cabinet last year. Because there were so many people that needed to occupy those positions. And some of them were returning. So he would have been a chief of staff in the previous administration, but he didn't have a degree. Coming back, we say we need a degree. You can't be a chief of staff and do all the work that senior managers do with a Form 2 or Form 3. And nothing wrong with that. But there's levels of work that you can do with a Form 2, but just not being a chief of staff. And there are people that have had to be demoted. There are people that previously would have been chief of staff, but now are junior officials because they couldn't qualify to be chief of staff. Because you say, this minister, he might be coming, he may need support, but he needs to get the right support at the right level. So if you say you're going to advise the minister, you better know what you're doing or be at some level. So I'm told there were quite a number of ministers that made calls to say, yeah, but you see, I'm a senior politician. We said, no, the law is the law. And some of them were covered in the media. I'm sure you can even Google. I think there's one who's refusing to resign now, but eventually he's going to resign. So as you know, we are now in the journey. Actually, this is the last administration before the 2030 NDP. So this is the journey, and we know core to it is the issue of the professional and ethical public administration. That's what we seek to achieve. The capable state has and requires human capabilities and institutional capacity. You know, there are many at times where we train people, they say, you know, you train us and we hear you and we see all these values, but when we go back, the institutions we go back into are something else. So they don't allow us to practice the good practice that you tell us to do. So some of the work that we try to do is to say we must also look into institutions. And part of it is assisting institutions with the issues on skills audit. We even, in some instances, assist with the strategic planning processes and change management. So we try and support the entire institution other than that, just individuals. We've already spoken about the issue of ethics, and a state that is driven by the constitutional values and principles of public administration. So we do know that there are proposals to say, maybe we must get to even a point where when somebody blows the whistle and the state saves some money, maybe a person must be rewarded for that. Other countries are already doing it, so we can also do it. Developmental state, we must be able to intervene and have a participatory public administration. We are trying it at the moment, but I still think there's a big area, especially when you look at the SOEs. There's a big area that we need to do there. Well, one thing I forgot to indicate is that one of the work that we're also starting to do is to train or to induct board members. Because as we have seen with the State Capture Commission, is that some of the rot started from the board levels. And it's because sometimes it would just be people that come off the street, and not that there's anything wrong with coming off the street, maybe they were coming off from the mountain and just becoming board members. So we're saying now, come and let's induct you. So part of the things that were indicated in the NDP is an uneven state capacity leading to uneven performance. And basically here was comparing at different levels to say usually in local government, the capacity is not as required. And as a result, there's uneven performance in the whole of public service. And sometimes there's a political administrative interface, the instability of administrative leadership, and I will talk to some of this because the framework tries to address some of these issues. A lack of sustainable interventions, deficit in skills and professionalism. We have seen people that say, actually, I will never work in government. Recently, there was a friend of mine who's a CA. She was a CFO in one of the state entities. She left in no time. Within months, she said, no, this is not the environment I can work in. Interference in recruitment processes, lack of leadership. So, as we know, one of the things that are proposed is that the Public Service Commission, in the state of the Public Service Report, identified the following challenges, and some of them I may have already spoken about it. So in the end, the result is that there's inequitable delivery of services, lack of transparency and accountability, lack of human resource, wasteful expenditure that I think colleagues spoke about. So what should be the focus if we are to really build the state? We need to build a state that is capable of playing a developmental role, the service that needs to be immersed in the development agenda. And staff at all levels have the authority, experience, and support that they need to do their jobs. And that's why the issue of pre-exams to ensure that people that come into the system are required to do that. stabilize the political administrative interface, and part of it is what I spoke about, to ensure that in the political offices it's people with required thing. We can only do so much. We hope at some point even political parties will say, Chief, to become a minister, maybe you need a certain minimum qualification, or to become a mayor, maybe you need a certain minimum qualification. Make the public service and local government administration careers of choice. And part of this is you'd see in the NDP, they suggest a super DG that must chair or must appoint all the DGs, for example. That practice is already starting. So for all interviews of DGs at national, the DG in the presidency sits in that. So you no longer leave it to just the ministers. Support professionalization of local government in line with newly adopted professionalization framework and fill vacant positions. So the framework deals with key pillars on recruitment, and I've already spoken about the issue of the exams that will be setting. Right now, there's Nugela, as I say, for those who want to be senior managers. Soon, we'll be introducing for middle managers. So from a level, is it ASD, from level 9, if you want to become a manager, soon there will also be that requirement where you're going to be writing some exam. Induction and onboarding. I mean, there are some jobs where even before you sit at your desk, you go for induction. But we have seen in the States, sometimes you go for induction even 2 years after you've been in your position. And the question is it still effective? So we are trying to modernize that. Planning and performance. So this is where the issue of linking up with the professional bodies on the side of the NSG, we have already started talking to bodies like SIGFARO with that. Continuous learning and professional development. Again, it talks to what do you do once you are in the system. I mean, we know there are already fellow public servants like your teachers, your nurses that are already doing well in this. But why can't we cascade it to everyone? I mean, one of the things we're even thinking about as NSG ourselves is to say even our trainers would need to be professionalized in one or the other. So they are not just training people, but they're also required from time to time to attend courses. Career progression, succession planning. I just spoke about the issues of age, for example, the challenge that we have, management of career incidents. I mean, I know in one, on the issue of age, I know in one department, national department, where I think at some point, they didn't have a single person who was below 35 in their NSMS level. And they're not the only ones. You find it many departments or entities where you hardly have young people at senior management. So these are the key pillars. And as part of intervening on our side, we also are making these courses. I'm sure those of you who have not visited our website now, you will visit this. These are some of the courses that we have. But key on it is ethics in the public service, which is compulsory for all public servants, and it's a free course. So you can't even say I didn't have bursary to do it. You can do it. So at our website, all these courses are available, and you can register it at any time. And even when you complete, you can. You are able to print a website. We have even seen people parading themselves with their printed certificates in their dining rooms at leisure. So we have a new course that we have just established. I mean, that just revised, because the one that we had was ethics in the public service. So it's ethics in local governments, which explores foundations of ethical behavior, rules and principles guiding the behavior of municipal officials. So for those of us who work with municipalities or even support municipalities, this will be a very good course to advise our colleagues there, and deals with addressing issues when things go wrong in a municipal setting, understand the role and importance of whistleblowing in a free and democratic society. I mean, this is something that we really need to encourage, because we do know that sometimes people feel, I can see everything going wrong, but what do I do? And I'm always inspired when I enter municipal space and you see, if you see something about corruption, call this number, toll free. And I'm always wondering, does it really work? And maybe someday we should test it. It will be interesting to know whether it does work. So for those of us who work in the area, this is one area. If we get it right, they always say when you appoint somebody, even if the person doesn't have the skills, but they have the right attitude, eventually they will learn the things to do. But even if you appoint the best professional in the world, if the person is unethical, there's nothing you can achieve with that person. So if there's one area that we need to continuously work hard, is on the area of ethics. And there's legislative framework. I want to respectfully differ with the colleague earlier on who said politicians never regulate themselves. We have seen with the MFMA and maybe PFMA to some effect that politicians are barred from participating in certain processes. That is for a reason. To ensure that when they say you're an accounting officer, you have the legislative framework that protects you from doing what you are supposed to do. So we know councillors in some instances, they cannot even be observers, as an example, or even any other politician, even in the SCM processes. That is done for a reason, to ensure that they are completely kept out. They may try to come in other areas, and that's where our integrity comes in to say, are you going to allow that? I'm sure it's not an easy thing to do. I'm not standing here suggesting it's just easy to say no to them, but you need to protect your integrity. You can't give in. And that's something that we should continue to try to preach. And they say wrong is wrong even if everyone is doing it, and right is right even if no one is doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. So before you go, if there's any questions, a show of hands. No questions. Okay, oh, there is one online. Shloni, can you just assist us with that?
Is that the only question? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brasmanga. I'm just surprised that all the prior facilitators were never asked questions online. But am I being the one being victimized online here? Where am I the first, Brasmanga? Okay, all right. I think it's a very good question. The issues on the professionalization is a minefield. We have tried to engage, actually we have already engaged many professional bodies that are involved in the public sector. It's a minefield. As it stands at the moment, ideally, maybe let me start at the end. Eventually we'd want to get to that level where we say, just like in teaching, you can't be appointed as a teacher unless you are registered with a professional body. Eventually we want to get there, but we have to start somewhere. Right now, many of the professional bodies are focused towards private sector. So if you look in the legal profession as an example, if you are a lawyer, somebody who's qualified in law, and you work in government, and you are exposed to all sorts of litigations, for some reasons you are not considered to be in practice. And the same applies to, let's say, in the accounting profession. So it's only recently where some treasuries can take people to do their in-service training there. But for majority of departments, if you are working in a department and you are an accounting graduate, you are not considered to be in practice. So we need to start there at a point where professional bodies work with public service as part of the areas that they cover in. And as an example, on the supply chain management, National Treasury, actually Cabinet has requested National Treasury to lead that. So we're working in them to identify, and that's why, for example, SIGFARO is one of the partners that are identified. SIPS is one of them. In the built environment, we are also starting to work with few bodies that are there to say, what is it that we can assist for the current officials, for example, that are working in the engineering section in a municipality? How can their work be in one way or the other be recognized by a body of engineers, and as an example? So once we identify all those, we can get to a point where eventually we say, for everyone who gets appointed in the water sector as a water technician, you must be belonging to this body, because we do know part of the challenges we have right now is because people that are not qualified in water work in water, or people that are not qualified in every area work in the area. So I do agree with you, but that's the work that we've already started. And as I say, it's going to take a bit of time, but that is the ultimate goal that we want to get into. And as I indicate, SCM and the built environment and the trainer sector, it's one of the few identified sector. So you will see, for those who work in that sector, soon you will see some real movements to do that. But eventually, we want to cover everyone in the public service, as I indicate. And there's many professional bodies that are applicable to that.